He was the only son of Italian immigrants, and when he was 18 years old, he left the family farm in Alabama and went off to war. He had never been away from home, and the first beach my father ever saw was Omaha Beach, where he and his buddies landed in June of 1944. When I was a boy, he used to tell me stories about the war. He would show me medals and swords and memorabilia that he had collected as he and his battalion had fought their way across Europe. He was there when General George Patton delivered his famous speech just before D-Day. He was there during the Battle of the Bulge when it seemed as if all was lost. He was there as the infantry advanced through France and Germany, defeating the enemy and liberating villages and towns along the way. All of his stories were a fascinating look into history from someone who had witnessed it firsthand. One day when I was about 12, he told me he wanted to show me something that had happened during the war. In his hand he held a photo album. He said, "This happened at a concentration camp." I didn't know what that was, but he said the Nazis were killing people there, but we made them stop. He and his buddies had found some cameras and film a few days before the liberation, and they took pictures when they entered Dachau. He said, "I want to show you these for two reasons. First, at some point in your life, someone's going to try to tell you that the Holocaust didn't really happen." He said it did happen. I was there and I saw it. Secondly, I want you to make sure that nothing like this ever happens again. I was shocked as I looked through the photos. There, laid out before me, was death and inhumanity on a massive scale. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen. It was unimaginable, horrifying. He went on to describe all he had seen and experienced that day. Hardened combat veterans, he said, men who had seen everything, were visibly shaken. Some were weeping openly. He told me that he looked down into one of the rail cars and among the lifeless bodies saw a young lady leaning against a corner nursing a baby. Both of them were dead. He said that he knew that no matter how long he lived, he would never see anything more tragic than that. He prayed that God would forgive him for not getting there sooner so that he could have saved that lady and her baby. Thousands had died at Dachau, but thousands more had been liberated. The survivors looked like the walking dead, but they began cheering and embracing each other while looking at us in disbelief, almost unable to grasp that their day of liberation, their exodus, was at hand. Just then, as if on some celestial cue, the sun broke through the clouds, sending shafts of light and color over the entire camp. Darkness had been defeated by light, and the prisoners, squinting into that brilliance, reached out to us and wept tears of joy. My father's battalion left Dachau the next morning, having assisted the relief organizations in their efforts to bring some semblance of humanity back to this place that had endured so much tragedy and sorrow. Now, after a year of combat, each of us finally and forever understood why destiny had called us to travel so far from the land of our birth and to fight for people we did not know. And so it was here, in this place abandoned by God and accursed by men, that we came to discover the meaning of our mission. The Holocaust ended the minute the American soldiers entered the gates of Dachau. The war ended a few days later. My father had told me that he had been afraid to leave home before the war began, but now, at the war's end, he was even more afraid to return home. He felt that he wasn't the same person who had left 3 years earlier. Perhaps he had seen too much. Perhaps he had felt too much heartache. Perhaps he'd never be able to explain what really happened. Perhaps he'd never be the same. I know that his eyes would well up with tears even 60 years later when he would recount the story of Dachau. These men are the heroes. They were the liberators. They traveled far from the homes and families they loved. They endured hardships that most of us will never understand. fought, some of them laid down their lives to ensure that America remained free. They stood tall, and they prevailed. And in their own profoundly selfless way, they not only served their country, they saved the world.